Every single day, we work hard to provide meals to those in need. In our community, too many people face hunger and uncertainty, but you have the power to change that. Your generosity can transform lives. Provide a meal, be the hope.
Hey, good morning, Facebook. I have a good friend, Pastor Mark Hammond. He's a friend of the ministry of the Modesto Gospel Mission, and he's the senior pastor of Celebration Center. And I have him as a guest. Thank you, Mark, for being a part of our podcast. This is literally our second or third podcast,
All right.
bringing in pastors talking about the city of Modesto and the church. So thank you for being here.
I appreciate you inviting me. It's an honor to be here. I love this place.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like my first remembrance of Mark sharing his heart with the Modesto Gospel Mission.
Yeah.
I was in the program here, and we were doing a Friday prayer, praise, and worship.
Ah,
And you were leading worship at that point on the piano.
yeah.
And I'm in the audience in the program. And that was the first time I think I remember you. And you shared your testimony of what you went through in your journey
Yeah.
with your first wife. And it just totally changed my whole point of view. And thank you for being vulnerable during that day to share your testimony
Yeah.
at a very time in my life was transitional. And so, yeah, we're going to have a discussion, Mark,
All right.
about like the church.
Yeah.
And so, like, let me throw a question to you.
Sure.
When we hear the word church, we think of a building. How do you get yourself to think outside of the walls of Celebration Center into the city?
You know, yeah, interesting. The church has always been, I've never really thought about it being a building at all. In fact, we came from very humble beginnings. Just a little backstory on me and my life.
Yeah.
I grew up over by Bayer High School. So if you're familiar with Modesto, back in the day, I've been around for a while. My parents bought a brand new house, and it was over by Bayer, and they were looking for a church, and they found a church across the other side of town. And I remember they kind of felt like they were missionaries to their city. So I grew up with that. They didn't want to go anywhere, but they looked for a rough neighborhood, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. I remember we went past a few churches, and as a 4-year-old kid, not that I remember much about it, I
Yeah.
definitely didn't have an opinion of anything back then because 4-year-olds didn't get opinions. But I remember going past some of the bigger churches and we just kept going. And then we got to a neighborhood that didn't have any sidewalks.
Yeah.
And that's the first time I'd ever experienced that. And we ended up in the neighborhood that we did. And so the church to me had always been, because my parents thought missional. So it had always been, where can we go in our city to help our city? It was
Yeah.
never about the building. The building was super humble, which ours still is. We've moved since then,
Yeah.
but we are the pastors of our church that I grew up in.
Yes.
For 54 years, I've been there.
54 years.
54 years. Yeah, so the church has never been about a building, it's always been about the need. To
Yeah.
me, that's what my parents did. If there was a need and they could meet it, then they simply did. So they kind of live like missionaries in our city.
And that's a powerful statement. When we think of missionaries, we think global.
Yeah,
And I think the Lord is also we've abandoned our own missionary field in our cities.
I believe so.
And I think the Holy Spirit can move in a way to say and evangelize in our heart certain soldiers of the Lord to be able to say our city needs to be evangelized. And I
Yeah,
think you're one of those, honestly.
yeah.
54 years at Celebration Center.
Neighborhood.
The neighborhood that he's talking about is the airport neighborhood.
Yeah,
That's so the Modesto Gospel Mission is at the gate of the airport neighborhood. And I'm born and raised in Modesto myself, so like one of the most impoverished areas in our city is the airport neighborhood.
right.
And what a beacon of hope Celebration Center was for that
Yeah.
neighborhood for how many years? It was like
Uh,
Lighthouse Church
Yeah,
at one point.
yeah, it was Lighthouse Temple. At first, it started out as a Holiness Church. The
Okay.
name was Holiness Church, and then it
Love
went to
it.
Lighthouse Temple, Lighthouse Family Worship Center, everything Lighthouse, until we discovered that really we were near the airport.
Yeah.
So we just thought, what do we do? And what we do is we celebrate. We celebrate victories, big ones, small
Yeah.
ones. So that's when we became
Celebration Center.
Celebration Center.
And
Yeah.
and then making the move a few years ago to McHenry,
Yeah.
is that transition as the building church, but as the church itself? How have you seen that to be the transition?
Interesting. It's only, I think it's like 1.2 miles
Uh-huh.
away from this location to that location, but it was a big deal. It was a big deal for us to cross over the tracks. There was a lot of mindset that we had to get past. A lot of people, including myself, we had just become comfortable with where we were
Mhm.
and the risk of going over the tracks to McHenry and realizing that, people exist on both sides of the tracks, and it's the same people with the same problems. They just drive different cars
Yeah.
or different vehicles, or maybe where we were, there were a few more bicycles.
Yeah.
But honestly, people still need Jesus. They still need the Lord. They still have a need. I kind of, just as I'm talking about that, I'm reminded of, I don't know, maybe 15, maybe close to 20 years ago. I hate to say that, but around the time that you and I met somewhere in that area, I remember being here at the
Yeah.
Modesto
Yeah.
Gospel Mission. I remember having my eyes open. I stayed late one evening, and I was just maybe on a tour. I was just checking things out, and I remember I was upstairs and I looked down, and there were some Mercedes Benz in
Yeah.
the parking lot,
Yeah.
and they weren't volunteers. And
Yeah.
I thought, what is this? I
Yeah.
actually was really surprised by it. I said, what is this? And it was men that needed a place.
Yeah.
They had a car,
Yeah.
they had a job, but they needed something. And so, to your original question, what is the church? That is the church. Our city is the church. To me, I just figure that we've got a bunch of churches in the neighborhood,
Yeah.
bunch of buildings.
Yeah, really cool. I want to just point out you're kind of bivocational,
I am,
meaning
yeah.
you are a senior pastor of a pretty large church in Modesto and Celebration Center. But at the same time, you also work out in the marketplace
I
as a
do.
real estate agent.
Yes, sir.
And I find it very fascinating and very driven by the Lord that you have created a ministry. Share a little bit of what that looks like for the city and those real estate agents that are believers. What do you do for them as the church? But how do you just share a little bit about
Right.
that?
Yeah. So I'm definitely bivocational, and that's really by choice.
Yeah.
I could just, not just, but I could pastor the church alone. But I just think it's important for me to get out into the marketplace. How am I going to know what's going
Mhm.
on and really feel the heartbeat of our city if I'm inside the walls of our
Yeah.
church? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. When you're out and about, you're realizing like these are my peers.
Yeah.
And my peers needed something. So what we did about a year and a half ago, I got together with one of the ladies. Her name is Nancy in our church,
Mhm.
and she has been a real estate agent for many years. She is one of the pros in our industry, and we got together and said, what if we got together in our church? We have a place, in fact, we could talk about it if you want, where Valente Coffee
Yeah.
is actually
Yeah.
there in our church, but we have a coffee shop and we call it Common Ground. And in Common Ground, we just really wanted to create a space that's not Celebration Center.
Yeah.
And we want to create a space that we could use for different things. And so once a month, we gather the realtors together, real estate agents and insurance. If they're pros, we're not
Mhm.
kicking anybody out. They want to get together, and we
Mhm.
get together for 1 hour.
Yeah.
We offer a continental breakfast and we pray together.
Yeah.
We encourage each other. We tell testimonies,
Mhm.
and what we really have done is created a community of friends within the
Yeah.
church also. So it's a safe place that now we're noticing that when people have needs outside agents, they actually feel comfortable. Just
Yeah. I mean, I don't know too much about the real estate world, but it could be very competitive, right? I would see,
to say that lightly.
yeah, it could be very competitive. I've been at these events serving coffee, and I've seen tears roll down some of the testimonies, and really the fellowship that happens when you're isolated in a competitive market where you can come together and be vulnerable. That's the ministry you've created there. And kudos to you to bridge that for those individuals out there in the marketplace, believers, to be able to come to and do that. I want to touch back on the point where Celebration Center, they make that move basically, and they have this outlet, and it's an old bar. It is. It's an old bar, and we just launched Valente. And Mark comes to, I think, me and he says, how
Yeah.
about starting a coffee thing? And when we started Valente, we were only going to roast Valente
Yeah.
coffee.
Yeah.
And in my world, I'm thinking in my head, now this is going to be simple. We'll just get some pots of coffee and serve coffee, only to find out like it takes, equipment. And then
Yeah.
we basically, from the ground up, launched in your space
Yeah.
without charging a nickel because of your heart for the mission, Volente Coffee. And if you ever see it, like it is a beautiful space
Yeah.
that we were able to serve as a connection of ministry together,
Yeah.
and we have men and women on our program that they're every Sunday
Yep.
that work it. So thank you for allowing us to have our first space in that barista world. That kind of what launched us in that. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Oh, you bet.
Super cool space. But what else are you doing in the community that you find to be empowering for your church? I mean, I know there's a few things that you do. Just wanted to kind of open up the
Yeah.
platform for you to just share your heart.
Sure. Well, again, when you say for your church, I kind of cringe at that because it's his church,
Okay.
and we're kind of part of the. I get that I'm a
54 years of church. It's your church.
pastor. I get that, but we're able to. My heart is to really connect a lot of the pastors. I have in my phone. I just a couple of years ago started
Oh yeah.
because of where we were. We were over in the airport
Yeah.
district, and really nobody knew where we were. Nobody knew who we were, and we're not looking to be known or to be
Yeah.
heard as far as that goes. But I often heard this thing that said, well, that church and this
Yeah.
pastor and that pastor, and I sort of realized it's not that we don't like each
Yeah.
other. It's just that we don't know each other because we work on the same day.
Yeah.
We work
Yeah.
on Sundays, we work on Wednesdays, we work on Thursdays. So that's what we've been really intentional on getting some pastors together. In fact, today, in just a couple of hours, we're going to have about 30, 35 pastors from our city that are going to come to Common Ground
Yeah.
to our coffee shop, or we're going to have sliders, some type of a lunch, and we're just going to pray together, encourage each other. We're going to share testimonies, maybe a small devotion. We're going to worship,
Yeah.
and it's going to be an hour. And it's not just people that look like me, that act like me, that worship like me, that preach like me. It's just people from our city that are coming together and getting acquainted. And I
Yeah.
think that it's a unique move in our city. I think that it's really the beginning of something that's happening in other cities as well. I'm not saying that we created connection,
Yeah.
but I am saying that connection is wasn't happening about 5 or 6 years
Yeah.
ago in our city as much. And now we've got anybody coming today from a pastor that has a church of 3 people
Yeah.
to a pastor that has a church of 2,500
Yeah.
people.
I think one thing that people doesn't realize, and yourself, even myself included, being a senior pastor is a lonely place.
It can be, yeah,
And it can be. Being in high leadership can be a lonely place.
yeah,
You absorb all of the conflict. You are navigating all the
yeah,
terrains of issues, and then you're left to try to figure out how do you fellowship? How do you get filled up?
yeah,
And I think that's what that platform really is a place to come together and to bear each other's burdens.
yeah,
And I think that's what gets missed in as the church, because of going back to it, the church becomes this, well, my building, and I at one point I was a campus pastor underneath
yeah,
you, at in Oakdale, and I took on this role. It's a different world.
yeah,
So I having experience, it's just a different world. Like
yeah,
being the CEO and being a campus pastor, I look at the two, and it's just there's a lot of difference, because when you're shepherding a flock, you do have a building that you're entrusted to, like we have a building here, and then I've learned some prime examples of that in my life, of like, wow, how much different it is, but how similar it is, because really we are always pouring out. So for you to have a place like today for pastors to come to and just settle in and pray, I don't think people see how important that is. So I just want to thank you for
yeah,
providing that outlet in that. But there's much more to Celebration Center, and even yourself. Like you open up your building for all kinds of different things, don't you? Like,
yeah. Well, yeah, we do our best to open it up for Well, for lots of things. We came from a smaller
Yeah.
building, and so we were really intentional when we did go there. We were, we were looking for a church, and wouldn't you know it, if you know, you know us, we're unique, and we know that, and we're okay being unique. We believe that God created each one of us for our space, each one of us for, I'm called different
Yeah.
than you are. We're all called to increase the kingdom and to build each other up as we worship the Lord. And our ultimate goal is to, the Great Commission.
Yeah.
But in that, when we were looking for a building, you mentioned that we were a bar. It was, yeah, it really was the original. If you don't
Yeah.
know, if maybe you're watching, you don't know where we are. We're on McHenry and Fairmont, and originally was the Elks Lodge,
Yeah.
and then it became an event center
Yep.
for 20 years. And so, still in our sanctuary, we went in there and we we did some remodeling and some updating and so forth, but there's still the coffee bar that we're talking
Yeah.
about used to not sell coffee. It
Yeah.
used to sell other beverages, we're
Yeah.
going to say, and in our sanctuary as well. But because we had a larger space, I just told the Lord, look, if you will trust me with this, then I will share it the
Yeah.
best that I can, and I'll be a good steward of it. So we're able to a lot of the smaller churches in town, they'll have a conference, they'll have
Yeah.
something, and they'll need a space,
Yeah.
or maybe there's a pastor who has come to me, and I hear their heart, and their heart's pure, and they just need a space to they're planting a church,
Yeah.
and they just need a space to get together with their leadership. Or not too long ago, we had for about a year, we had a pastor and his worship team that would go upstairs into one of our little rooms and would just practice worship
Yeah.
because they had a space on Sundays, but they didn't have a space to practice during the week. So
Yeah.
we really try to utilize every space. It's not our
Yeah.
house. It's not our church. It's his. So I figure his house is always
Yeah,
open.
I mean, I think there's celebrations of lives that you guys do. They're opening it up to people that don't even attend your
Yeah.
church, just being that beacon of a light to individuals at their most vulnerable seasons in their life when they're hurting. You just step in that gap. I've seen it time and time again to open up your door to say,
Yeah.
We'll welcome you in
Yeah. Well,
doing
there
that."
was recently, don't mean to interrupt you. There was
Yeah,
recently a beautiful moment where one of the he was an associate pastor in our city, had passed away after a battle with cancer, and their church building, I don't know, maybe held 100
yeah,
people, but I knew this was a general in our city. So we invited them in, and they were able, I think they had, I don't know, 400 people or something,
yeah,
and they were able to just to come together. And it's not me, trust me, I have a team of volunteers and a few staff members. It's our honor to
yeah,
serve our family. And to me, us, that's what it is. It's not it's not that church and their people. This is our family. If we are children of God, then you are truly
yeah,
my brother. And if I
yeah.
can serve my family, then why wouldn't I serve
Well,
my
I think it
family?
goes back to what the Lord tells us that we are the church,
Yeah,
and then sometimes we put too much burden on a building and what kind of church that is
yeah,
when the Lord has called us individually to be the church.
we are. Yeah.
And then I have to look at myself and what kind of church am I? And there's a lot of flaws in me
Oh,
personally.
me as well. Yeah,
And I think all of us, when we really want to be vulnerable, are like, man, I need to change my church, my temple, who I am, so that I can better reflect so people aren't repelled against the gospel
yeah.
but they're attracted to who I am, and that's been a journey in all my years. But another thing is like we partner again with Celebration Center and the Modesto Gospel Mission in like us holding our graduations. Mark opening up his doors so that we have a new life program and
Yeah.
we have men that graduate and we open our doors on that. So there's all these different ways. But I want to ask you a question. If you could change this city in one way, like if the
Hmm.
church can mobilize together, what ways do you think you can come to this city and say, man, I like to see this change? Whether it's the church or whether it's just the body of Christ.
I think that's an interesting question because I really believe that my heart, we're kind of in the middle of the change.
Yeah.
I believe that in my heart, just talking last night, I was on the phone with another senior pastor
Yeah.
in town, and just hearing his heart, and so I really think that if just unity coming together, I don't think that there's a divide in our city. I really don't think so. I think that maybe not, people putting this church is this and this church is this and this church is this, when really we are the body.
Yeah.
And we know the scriptures, the hands, the feet. We know the scriptures, but really I would like to see the church just being able to come together in unity. And there's been, we had talked about it a couple of days ago. We have, downtown worship
Yeah.
that many, I mean, that's not common.
Yeah.
It's not a common thing. And Pastor Lance is receiving all kinds of phone calls from other cities and other states and other people that are wanting to know what that is. So my heart is really unity. I think that in my perfect world, I'm sitting here talking to Jason Conway, and he's the executive director of the
Yeah.
Modesto Gospel Mission. But but my heart is that people would see Jason Conway 20 years ago
Yeah. Yeah.
and look beyond.
It was a mess.
Yeah, and well, it was.
See,
But looking beyond that, I think that, I mean, the Lord, if my heart, and it's not always, I'm definitely not a perfect person.
yeah. Yeah.
My heart is that we would all put on the Lord's goggles, if
Yeah.
you will, and see beyond it. I remember when I first met you, knowing that there was something special about you, but
Yeah.
my heart is that we would know there's something special about everybody, and realizing that 20 years down the road, I mean, you see a guy on the street. Um, it's really good. Our city, I think that our city is, I'm probably not answering your question.
No, you're fine.
You I take rabbit trails.
No, you're fine.
So our city is really good at outreach. I think that our city is really good at, honestly, and you can correct me, of course, I'm
No.
not a pro at it,
Yeah.
but at coming together and serving a meal or meeting in a park with
Yeah.
with some lunch bags.
Yeah.
Our city is really good at that. But I think that what our city is becoming more aware of, and what I've become more aware of, and part of it is with the move, is we all have things in common. Like we all have prodigals. We all have people in our family, whether it's us or somebody else in our
Yeah.
family, that
Yeah.
have addictions. We
Yeah.
we all have that. So my heart is that everybody would just realize that we're human beings.
Yeah.
We're hu-
Just imagine, I mean, this is my heart, and this is what I'm hearing from your heart, what I'm seeing move and how God is moving. Just imagine if the church was to mobilize together, the powerful force that it would be for Modesto. When we just came together, not thinking about, all the mortgages and the utility bills, and we were just lay that to the side for a minute and say, you know what can we do for our city downtown worship? I was impressed. Not only was I impressed, it was my first time being there. I prayed a little bit. It's definitely wasn't anything that I started at all. Like it was something that you had shared a couple times behind the pulpit on Sundays that I remember, like, oh, that's kind of neat. But it's Sunday at 6. I got to come to work Monday.
I know.
But I have to say, when I was there and I'm in the audience, I twice over felt like when they lowered that crippled body down to Jesus just so that they can get through the crowd.
Yeah.
That's the sense that I got from that united front. People were so hungry
Yeah.
to be a part of that, and I was impressed.
Well, I
Like
think that's what's so great is Pastor Lance had a vision,
that is,
and he made the vision big enough. He didn't make the vision just about him and his few. He made it about all of us coming together. And when you're in there and you're downtown, I mean, we're talking about a couple thousand people coming together on a Sunday night when it's so hot outside,
yeah,
and from all different churches, all different areas, all different lives. I think that is where our city is unique, is that he didn't make that about him and his church.
yeah,
He made that about, here's a space that if you guys want to join us. And now I don't know, I think there were over 20 churches that participate. I heard just yesterday, I was talking to somebody and they said, my favorite part of downtown worship. And I'm like, the worship? They said, no, my favorite part is looking over to the left-hand side and seeing all of you pastors laughing with each other
yeah,
and greeting each other with a hug. And,
yeah,
and so I think that sense of unity, when you ask me,
yeah,
how would we like to mobilize the church in our city? I think that we're doing it.
yeah,
One handshake,
yeah,
one hug, one
yeah,
cup of coffee, one. It's not about the Modesto Gospel Mission. It's
yeah,
definitely not
yeah,
about Celebration Center. It's about the kingdom of God.
yeah,
And we we have a lane, and you have a lane.
yeah,
To stay in our own lanes. I'm not trying. In
yeah,
my church, we don't try to bring shelter
Yeah.
to the homeless
Yeah.
because you guys
Yeah.
have an amazing. So why wouldn't we partner
Yeah.
with you and then you partner with us? We offer life recovery on a Thursday
Yeah.
night, and
We didn't even touch on that,
yeah,
which is like, how big is that?
well, it's anywhere between 250 and 300 people on a Thursday night.
And many don't even go to your Sunday service. This is another part of ministry, right?
That is their Sunday
Yeah.
service. Yeah. So
Like, it's a huge thing that we didn't even get to touch on,
right.
is that recovery group that you have hundreds of men and women who are flocking to your campus just because they're in that path of recovery.
Right. And they feel like they're safe. And so it's nice for us. We can offer the New Life program can come to us and then we can send somebody to you. So we're not in
So, yeah,
competition.
so you literally have a Thursday night service.
We have a Thursday. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that is, yeah.
that is their
And
Sunday service.
maybe it isn't like a tradition, but it is a Thursday night service.
Worship,
Yeah.
word, altar calls,
Yeah.
people giving their life to Jesus.
Yeah, I mean that's amazing when you think about outside of Sundays is mobilizing a different opportunity on Thursdays for a group of individuals that are seeking the Lord to be that ambassador of Christ.
Right,
You
and
know,
people finding what their great space is. We have Tiffany Armesto, who is our one of our pastors and leaders in
yeah,
that. She also is over here with you.
yeah, yeah. I gave her a job as a chaplain and loving on these women who are in recovery. So like,
Yeah,
and she's leading your recovery group, her and Michael, right? A part of it,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, with Mama Liz. We can't
Yeah.
forget
Oh,
about
yeah.
Mama,
No.
Mama
Yeah.
Liz.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that's what it is us all giving handshakes and nobody being overprotective of their
Yeah,
spaces.
Mark, I appreciate your partnership. I appreciate
Thank
your
you.
heart to come on the podcast, really discuss the church and the gospel mission. Even though that we have different lanes, it is in the same journey of expanding God's kingdom, whether it be downtown worship, whether it be Celebration Center Thursday night, the gospel mission. Thank you, Mark,
I
for being
appreciate
a
it.
general in this community, for partnering with pastors, and God bless you, man.
God bless you too,
All
man.
right. Thank you, guys. We'll
All
see you
right.
next week.
Thank you.